So she is someone who really broke a lot of barriers in her lifetime. I mean, I think she was the first principal player of any orchestra as an African-American woman. And she also, you know, I think the thing about her that makes her very interesting is that her life kind of captures a lot of historical moments that are very important that we know of. Like, she was born in 1928 in Harlem. She talks about like going to see concerts with like Ella Fitzgerald, you know, like all of these iconic things that we think about in history. She talks about like the 1950s, she was involved in a lot of kind of like radical work, and she was, you know, she was part of the McCarthy hearings too. But then there's also this way in which I think that her life story allows us to see, you know, how these events, well, I think like just the kinds of ways in which trying to break through a lot of barriers, you know, had a lot of personal impact.
I mean, I do think that we're, you know, interested in furthering the reach of her story, and we want people to know about her, and she really does serve in a kind of awesome way as a hidden figure, as a role model, as someone we don't know about and should. Anyone should, but especially people that care about music and culture and you know, diversity, inclusion, exclusion within those fields. So so that's really, I think, one of the important things for people to get, and that means a lot, I think, for people to see. And I think the other side is to have people leave without a simple answer or a sense that all is okay because Elaine Jones exists. Kind of the opposite of that, you know, that the challenges she's experienced, the obstacles still exist, very much so, and to think that her existence means they don't is, you know, complete fantasy. So yeah, I don't know. You probably have a better way of putting it, Grace. What?
Well, I think that actually, no, I actually think that, Julie, you really hit a lot of the things that we've talked about. And I think that definitely she is you know, she's a hidden figure, right? In that way. And her story definitely is not one that we know about in the culture of classical music. And then I think even within that field, I think there's certain kinds of stories that we know that are more broad, like about, say, the emergence of screened auditions, right? I think that's something that has a wider kind of perception about what role it plays in terms of implicit hiring. But I think that one of the things, I don't know if actually now I'm veering off, but I do think that one of the things with her story is to really historicize it and contextualize it in a way that I hadn't heard before. And I'm someone who grew up very seriously playing music, you know, classical music as well. And so one of the things for me that really interested me about Elaine is that it really did shift in a profound way the way I thought about the field. And I'm someone who, and also I would say that my first book, also known as my only book, no, but my book also kind of explored this topic through a different group for the Asian Americans, which I think is, in an interesting way, it kind of picks up after a lot of the activism that these African American musicians like Elaine opened up for musicians, for women, which I think is how often the kind of advent of screen audition is often talked about in terms of a gendered kind of opening of the field of classical music, and how can we replicate this in other fields, right? I think that's one of the kinds of stories that we know about this kind of screen auditions. But I think that in terms of all of the activist work that musicians like Elaine Jones and other African-American and allies really like engaged in is really what opened up the field to a lot of musicians. But then that history has been really not forgotten, but just pushed to the margins and really not known even by people, I think, who are working within the field. And that's one of the things that was really striking to me. So I think that in some ways, Elaine Jones, her story complicates what we already know. And it also, and I think in that way that storytelling does is really kind of, kind of bring a personal kind of lens to, things like court cases or barriers, or, like really show the personal toll that it had on individuals as well.
Well, Elaine was inducted in November into the Percussionist Hall of Fame. And there's a ceremony and an event that's part of a really large and important percussion convention in Indianapolis. So this was a big moment for her. I think she didn't know, or getting on the plane or arriving, and sort of what the scale of the event would be, that there'd be 2,000 people sitting there as she was honored. But the clip that you have, the clip that you'll be seeing is shows a little moment from that experience, from her sort of getting ready, introducing you to her, and then seeing that moment, which in some ways is a bit of, it's sort of a highlight in some senses of the film, because it shows this level of recognition. But it's not the end of the film.
So where are you both in the process right now? I know this is still ongoing, and one of the things that I always like to do, particularly for graduate students that might be reading this interview or watching this interview, or aspiring filmmakers, is to kind of let them in on the struggles of the process, right? Rather than just seeing the shiny finished product. So I know that I think I can say I know that this moment has had to have had an impact on the process kind of moving forward, and thrown a little bit of a wrench into that. So where are you now with the process, and what are your plans kind of moving forward? Maybe that's answer enough, right? Silent. No.
Well, I think that one of the things that Julie and I have discussed is how we can use what we have to kind of like think about filling out the story with what we have, right? And how can we, because we're not sure when we can go back to film, like that's a real open question. So I think that's been one of the questions that we have. And then we're also, Elaine is older, we, in this moment too. So I think that has been, that might be, I think the thing that we have been talking through and wanting to talk through, in terms of how we can kind of, maybe we can rethink some of the things that we wanted to do with the story, and just kind of like use what we have.
Right. I mean, we have had some great opportunities to film with her and have some great, have some strong footage. We had a couple of specific missing pieces that we planned, a couple of upcoming shoots that both, became impossible during COVID. And it's a little hard to know when and if we can do those things. So, that said, I mean, we're in a pretty nice, we've been, really honored to receive funding from a couple of different places that have selected the project, not just to help us with the, the funds to get it finished, but also to bring the film out to the world, and to plan events that involve, local orchestras, that involve working with a really amazing consultant who works specifically with diversity and inclusion efforts in orchestras across the country, and creating curriculum for board members and audiences. And so we're excited, we have this support to get the film out there, and to get it finished. It's just kind of figuring out what opportunity, do we need to wait, or can we get this, can we use the resources can we step into the sort of, phase of finishing and distribution in a way that is possible under the, pandemic restrictions.
Right.
So, yeah, so there's a bright, kind of future. And the question is, how much do we wait, and how much do we reframe a little bit to keep going on the path we had in a virtual way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess you could try to get her on Zoom, right?
Oh no,
No.
we cannot. She.
You don't want Zoom?
That was really funny, Anna.
She is unable to use Zoom, but I have spent many sessions trying to get WhatsApp on her phone.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think I'd recommend putting Zoom in your.
It's more. Yeah, no, it's true though. I mean, I think for film right now, filmmakers documentary filmmakers are exactly asking that question. How can we use these kinds of tools to and even stylists? I mean, the style is like, how do we work with that, right? The visuals of it, but even just to follow and include someone's voice and presence. It's, it's tricky because of, the limits of the technological challenges and limits. And part of what we really wanted to be able to film is Elayne interacting with her contemporaries. And that's something that we, is so important to her. And as much as we've encountered her kind of by herself a lot, it's not her natural, whatever you call it, alignment is to be social and among a group of people. So that is precisely the thing that's hard to do right now, to have physical presence with a group of people. And that's what we need to figure out. Is there a substitute? Do we opt to not have that? Or will we have an opportunity, and when? So, yeah.
One thing that I did actually just want to mention is that Julie and I, well, I don't know, I speak for both of us, that we're really, we feel a lot of gratitude for getting this grant this year, because I think it really opened up the project for us in many really important ways. One is just being able to go film with her, when she got that opportunity to win this, this amazing award that we didn't even know about when we wrote up the grant proposal. And I think it really put us into contact with like a broader community of musicians, and also people who are working, in all kinds of fields related to music. So I think like that, in terms of the percussion world, it really opened up like just the kinds of people that we were talking to. We encountered a number of like young African-American musicians who were really just inspired by Elayne, and meeting her, it was just this amazing opportunity for us. So I mean, for them, I mean, for us too. But so I feel like for us, it really helped us to think about the project in a broader way. And then I think just in terms of, putting us into contact with other, letting us think much more broadly about what the film could do. So I think that one of the things I think for Julie and I is that we have started to conceive the film in a much larger way. And I think that's really thanks in part to having received this grant.